My friends, as I sit in the quiet of my library, reflecting upon the vast engines of industry I have helped to set in motion, I am often struck by a singular question that seems to baffle the common mind. Why is it that one man ascends the heights of his chosen calling, while his neighbor, perhaps more gifted in natural wit or favored by birth, languishes in the valley of unfulfilled desires? Many would whisper of luck or divine favor, but those who have felt the heat of the furnace and the weight of the iron know better. The answer, though simple, is as stern as the laws of the universe. It is not talent, nor brilliance, nor the fleeting spark of enthusiasm that builds a legacy. It is the unwavering spirit of perseverance. It is the capacity to present oneself at the post of duty every single day, regardless of the fluctuations of the spirit or the tempests of the external world. Let us be plain. To remain steadfast when the novelty has withered is a trial of the highest order. It is an art that must be cultivated, a discipline that must be hammered out on the anvil of daily habit, especially on those mornings when the fire in the hearth seems cold and the will is weak. In this discourse, I intend to guide you through the thickets of your own hesitation, to help you cast aside the crutches of excuse, and to forge a character of such moral fiber that it cannot be shaken by the whims of circumstance. If you are prepared to cease the endless cycle of starting and stopping, and to finally commit your soul to a purpose worthy of a man, then our shared journey commences at this very moment. Have you ever looked upon the great captains of industry or the masters of the arts and wondered why they reached the summit while so many others retreated at the first sign of fatigue? Is it because they possess a secret alchemy of the mind or a sturdier constitution? No, the distinction lies in consistency. I speak not of that temporary fervor, that morning mist of excitement that vanishes under the first rays of the midday sun, but of a silent, persistent devotion that operates independently of the emotions. It is the moral strength to press onward when the body is weary, when the task seems dull, or when the world offers no applause. This is the bedrock upon which every structure of lasting merit is erected. In my youth, I too fell into the trap of believing that inspiration was the primary motor of progress, but I have learned that inspiration is as fickle as the Scottish winds. It arrives with a roar and departs before the foundation is even dry. One cannot build a blast furnace upon the wind. One can, however, build a future on the steady accumulation of modest actions, repeated with the regularity of the tides. Most men begin their ventures with a loud flourish. They declare their intentions to the heavens, sketching grand designs for the reformation of their lives. Yet when the first frost arrives, a difficult encounter, a failure of a small enterprise, or merely a gray and somber morning, they begin to dally. I do not say this to condemn you, for I know the frailties of the human heart. I say it so you may understand that the path to grace is paved with the stones of reliability. When you act with consistency, you are doing more than merely completing a task. You are entering into a solemn contract with yourself. You are building a reservoir of self-trust. Each time you master the urge to loiter, each time you honor a promise made in the silence of your own mind, you are proving, without the need for fanfare, that you are a man of consequence, a man who can be relied upon. And once you possess the certainty of your own character, the entire world takes on a different hue. You no longer wait for the encouragement of others, nor do you check the barometer of your mood before deciding whether to labor. You become the master of your own destiny, the force that drives the wheel, rather than the dust that clings to it. Look closely at those whom history remembers. Do you imagine that the great builders of our age wake each day brimming with passion? Assuredly not. They endure the same shadows and the same doubts as any other.
The difference is that they show up. They tend to their ledgers, they oversee their mills, they refine their craft when no one is watching and when the gallery is empty. They understand a principle that is as old as the hills. Repetition is the mother of mastery. At the outset, your efforts may seem as insignificant as a single drop of water hitting a stone, but consider the power of the brook that flows without ceasing. In time, it carves through the hardest granite. Consistency is that flow. Without it, the greatest mind is but a stagnant pool. You may perform a virtuous act today and see no change in your fortunes. You may do so tomorrow and find yourself still in the shadows. But I promise you, by the law of the harvest, if you persist through the week, the month, and the year, you will wake one day to find that you have been transformed. This change will not be loud or theatrical, but it will be the most sustainable and profound revolution a man can experience. Furthermore, we must understand that this consistency is not a gift bestowed upon a lucky few at birth. It is a skill, a muscle of the soul that grows stronger with every exercise. You need not begin with the weight of the world upon your shoulders. Start with the small things, so small, in fact, that the ego finds no reason to rebel. Read but 5 pages of a serious book. Spend 10 minutes in reflection. Rise but a few minutes earlier than is your custom. You do not perform these acts because they are inherently pleasurable. You do them because they are the signals of the person you intend to become. Every small, consistent act is a vote cast for your future self. When you repeat these acts enough, the mind eventually bows to the reality of your actions, and you begin to operate from a new identity, the identity of a master. However, do not mistake this for a demand for impossible perfection. You will, on occasion, falter. You will have a day where the spirit breaks or the flesh fails. What matters is not the fall, but the speed with which you return to the path. It is not that I never stumbled in my journey from a bobbin boy to a steel master. It is that I refused to stay down. You do not need to be the most brilliant man in the room to succeed. If you are simply more consistent than your peers, you will eventually outpace them all. That is my word to you, and it is a pledge you must make to the man in the mirror. Each morning, remind yourself, I require no lightning bolt from heaven. I require only the discipline of the next step. If you continue to show up, you will inevitably surpass those who are smarter, more favored, or more talented, but who lack the stomach for the long march. Life does not reward the man who merely starts the race with a sprint. It crowns the man who is still walking when the sun goes down. I believe with all my heart that you are capable of being that man.
If you have ever whispered to your own soul, I shall attend to this on the morrow, or I require but a moment more of preparation before I strike, you are grappling with a foe that has laid low more men of promise than any market crash or industrial disaster. This invisible antagonist is procrastination. Yet, I would have you view it not merely as a lapse in industry, but as a symptom of a deeper struggle. Procrastination is not the mark of the lazy man. It is the brain's instinctive retreat when faced with the cold winds of fear, the fog of uncertainty, or the sheer mountain of a daunting task. And its most treacherous ally is perfectionism, a trait that many wear as a badge of honor, but which is, in truth, the most deceptive mask that cowardice can don. Left to their own devices, these two will silently plunder your hours, drain your vitality, and eventually bankrupt your confidence. I want you to see this clearly. Procrastination is the silent thief of a man's estate. It does not break in with a clamor. It seeps in through the cracks of small indecisions. It keeps you in a perpetual state of someday, a destination that exists on no map and leads to no harbor. You must disabuse yourself of the notion that you need more time. Time is the only capital that no man can borrow or increase. You have all the time there is. What you require is not more minutes, but the courage to begin this very hour with whatever humble tools are at your disposal. When a task looms large, the mind instinctively seeks an escape, a social diversion, a trivial errand, or the comfort of a lighter, less meaningful labor. This is not a lack of innate discipline, but a failure to reduce the friction of the start. The secret to defeating this inertia is to lower the threshold of the beginning until it is impossible to refuse. Do not gaze upon the finished cathedral. Focus instead on the laying of a single brick. Tell yourself, I shall labor at this for but 5 minutes, and then, if the burden is too great, I may set it down. Those 5 minutes are your sword against the dragon of delay. More often than not, once the iron is in the fire, the heat of the work itself provides the momentum to continue far beyond your initial pledge. Cease your vigil for the arrival of inspiration. In the world of practical affairs, motivation is not the herald that precedes action. It is the guest that arrives only after the work has begun. It is the act of doing, even the smallest, most imperfect act, that generates the steam to move the engine. Stop your overthinking. To think too long upon a thing is often its undoing. You do not need to see the entire length of the tracks to start the locomotive. You only need to see the first yard. We must also speak plainly about the vice of perfectionism. Many a man hesitates to put his hand to the plow because he fears the furrow will not be perfectly straight. He waits for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect weather. But let me tell you a truth learned in the soot of the mills. Nothing excellent was ever born perfect on its first day. Perfection is an altar upon which many sacrifice their progress, using it as an excuse to avoid the possibility of a humble failure. Yet, while the perfectionist waits in the parlor for the sun to be at the correct angle, the man of action has already been to the field, made his mistakes, learned his lessons, and moved leagues ahead. You must pursue progress, not the phantom of perfection. A task completed with honesty, however flawed, is of infinitely more value to the world than a perfect idea that never left the dreamer's head. Done is the word that builds empires. Perfect is the word that fills graveyards of ambition. To master your time, you must also learn to impose the discipline of the deadline. Without a fixed point of conclusion, the mind assumes the luxury of eternity, and the work expands to fill whatever vast horizon you allow it. Set a hard boundary for your tasks. Treat your appointments with your own work with the same solemnity you would accord a meeting with a king. If your environment conspires against your focus, you must exercise lordship over your surroundings. Clear the clutter from your writing desk. It is but a mirror of a cluttered mind. Silence the trivial interruptions of the world. When you detoxify your space, your behavior follows the path of least resistance towards productivity. I have found great merit in what some call the 2-minute rule. If a duty presents itself that requires less than 2 minutes of your breath, perform it instantly. To delay it is to pay a tax of mental energy far exceeding the task's worth. If a labor is vast, break it into fragments that require but 2 minutes to initiate. These small victories reduce the mental resistance that keeps you paralyzed. Furthermore, seek the strength of accountability. Proclaim your intentions to a trusted peer or a mentor. The knowledge that a fellow man expects an account of your progress doubles the likelihood that you will remain true to your post. We are social creatures, and the desire to stand tall in the eyes of our brothers is a powerful wind in our sails. Be mindful, too, of the company you keep. Your character is, in many ways, the average of the 5 souls you spend the most time with. If you reside among those who make excuses, who dally in the taverns of later, and who scoff at ambition, you will inevitably absorb their lethargy.
But if you immerse yourself in the company of action takers, men who value their word and their time, you will be pulled upward by the very gravity of their example. Choose your associates with the same care you would choose the partners in a great enterprise. Procrastination feeds on the succulent fruit of excuses. I am not sufficiently prepared. I am weary. The stars are not aligned. Every excuse sounds like a reasonable deduction until you subject it to the light of honesty and ask, what is the true cost of my delay? Picture your life a year from this day if you continue to yield to these whispers. You will be in the same chair with the same unfulfilled dreams, only older and more bitter. Now imagine the reward of seizing the day, the growth, the hardening of your will, the tangible results of your labor. Which of these portraits makes you feel the dignity of your manhood? Every time you slay the demon of procrastination and complete even a trivial task, you are rebuilding the bridge of trust with yourself. You are demonstrating that you are a man of power. This trust is invisible, yet it is the most valuable asset on your balance sheet. In the final accounting, you do not need a grand sweeping goal that blinds you. You need a daily system of specific actions. Do not merely say, I wish to be a scholar. Say, I shall study the great texts for 30 minutes every morning before the sun rises. Turn your vague wishes into a rigid schedule. Turn your dreams into the heavy, rhythmic habits of the day. When action becomes a part of your daily pulse, procrastination loses its grip upon your throat. And do not forget, my friend, to acknowledge your victories. When you push through the fog of resistance and perform your duty, allow yourself a moment of satisfaction. These small rewards reinforce the pathways of industry in the mind. You do not have to be a saint. You simply have to begin. And then you must keep going, day by day, until the act becomes the habit, and the habit becomes the man. For character is not forged in the moments of ease, but in those quiet battles where you chose to act even when the heart was heavy and the path was steep. Procrastination and perfectionism only hold power while you remain motionless. The moment you move, they vanish like ghosts at dawn, and you emerge as the most courageous and consistent version of yourself.
My friend, allow me to put to you a question that probes the very marrow of a man's worth. What is the invisible line that separates the master of his craft from the mere laborer? Is it the caprice of fortune, a more favorable birth, or the possession of a rare and fleeting genius? I have walked the halls of power and the soot-stained floors of the forge, and I tell you with the certainty of a man who has weighed the world's values, the true distinction lies in self-discipline. Discipline is the bridge, bolted with iron and paved with stone, that spans the chasm between the airy dreams of the youth and the solid realities of the achiever. It is not an inheritance of the blood. It is a habit forged in the heat of daily struggle, hour by hour, especially in those moments when one feels most directionless or drained of the oil of motivation. Have you ever made a solemn vow to your own heart, I shall begin this new course tomorrow, only to find yourself weaving a web of excuses when the sun rose on that appointed day? You are not unique in this struggle. It is the common ailment of the unformed character. But mark this truth well. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you are not merely delaying a task. You are chipping away at the foundation of the most vital trust you will ever own, the trust in your own word. Without that trust, a man is but a leaf in the gale. Discipline is not a cage, nor is it the removal of joy. On the contrary, discipline is the only true foundation of freedom. A man who cannot command himself is a slave to his appetites, a servant to his moods, and a victim of his circumstances. But the man who gains mastery over his own actions ceases to be a drudge and becomes a king. That deep, steady sense of being the captain of one's soul is the most peaceful and powerful state a human being can inhabit. Where then does this majestic virtue begin? It begins in the dust of the trivial. Do not wait for a grand occasion to exhibit your strength. Discipline starts with the making of one's bed. It starts with the drinking of a glass of pure water. It starts with the refusal to hit the snooze on the morning bell. These acts may seem beneath the notice of a man of ambition, but they are the first bricks in the fortress of character. Discipline does not flow from the fickle spring of inspiration. It flows from the granite reservoir of commitment. It is the commitment to do what you said you would do long after the mood in which you said it has evaporated. It is the act of showing up for yourself even on the darkest, most dismal days of the soul. It is not about a harsh, joyless coercion of the self. It is about choosing to stand as the guardian of the best version of who you may become. When you keep your word to yourself in these small matters, a remarkable alchemy occurs. That internal trust becomes the fuel that feeds a relentless persistence. And that persistence, my friend, will carry you leagues further than luck or giftedness ever dreamed of. By training the muscle of discipline, you develop an invisible power, a mental steel that does not shout or boast, but holds you steady when the world around you is trembling. It is the inner flame, quiet but unwavering, that lights the path forward when others have long since turned back to the warmth of the tavern. Understand that mental strength is not the absence of failure. It is the refusal to let failure define the boundaries of your soul. You will stumble, you will grow weary, but the disciplined man rises and moves nonetheless. Each time you choose the duty over the whim, you are forging a suit of armor more resilient and more grounded than before. The world believes that disciplined people act because they feel like acting. This is a fallacy. They act because they have decided to move before the emotions have had a chance to interfere. They follow one sovereign principle. I do this because I have chosen this path, and my choice is law. Do not mistake this for a life of bitterness or rigid austerity. Rather, discipline gives birth to a deeper, more enduring joy, the satisfaction of self-mastery. Perhaps today you only studied a few lines of a difficult text, or labored for a mere 15 minutes at your exercise, or mastered one new principle of commerce. If you do that every day, you are no longer the man you were yesterday. You are shaping a new identity, steadfast, solid, and unshaken by the temptations of the moment. The secret I wish for you to carry in your pocket is this: intentional repetition creates greatness. Not a single explosive effort of Herculean proportions, not a week of short-lived glory, but the quiet, steady, conscious, and purposeful repetition of the right actions. This is the only foundation for a success that will outlive the man. You do not need to be a titan or a saint. You simply need to be the one who shows up, who keeps his word when the results are still invisible, and who refuses to quit when the path is steep. Results do not arrive like a thunderclap. They grow like the oak, rings upon rings hidden beneath the bark. Start this very day. Do not attempt to move the mountain all at once. Choose one small action, one sacred commitment, and honor it with the devotion of a priest. Soon you will find that discipline is no longer a struggle you must maintain, but a part of your very breathing. When that happens, you are invincible. Not because you are never afraid, but because you move through the fear. Not because you are always strong, but because you refuse to let your weaknesses sit in the counting house of your decisions. Let today's action be a proclamation to the world and to yourself. A new future has begun. Let discipline be the greatest gift you ever bestow upon your own life. Let each setting sun find you a man who lived not by the fleeting shadows of emotion, but by the clear, powerful light of a long-term vision. I believe in the potential within you, for I have seen men rise from the very gutters of society to command the heights of industry, one disciplined day at a time.
It is now your turn to take up the hammer.
There is an invisible enemy that unfailingly presents itself at the very ramparts of any great undertaking. The moment you resolve to begin a new study, to master a difficult trade, or to cast off a slothful habit, this antagonist appears, quiet, persistent, and utterly relentless. It does not arrive with the roar of a lion or the visible steel of a foe on the battlefield. Instead, it comes with a familiar, honeyed whisper. You may attend to this in an hour. Your spirits are low today. Wait for a fresh morning. A single day's rest will surely do no harm to the cause. I call this force resistance. It is not a singular event, but a constant energy, a friction of the soul that rises in direct proportion to the importance of the work you attempt. My friend, I am not here to regale you with a fairy tale of unbreakable willpower that knows no struggle. I speak to you as one who has wrestled with this phantom in the early hours of many a cold Pittsburgh winter. Resistance is a part of the human machinery. It is the mind's own inertia. Yet, while it never truly vanishes into the ether, you can learn to outmaneuver it and claim victory every single day. Resistance feeds upon three things: the fog of delay, the chill of fear, and the lack of a clear map. The more vague your intentions, the more space you leave for this enemy to take up residence in your counting house. The first strategy in this moral warfare is not to strike with brute force, but to employ clarity. Do not tell yourself, "I shall labor at my ledgers today." That is a wide gate through which resistance may easily pass. Instead, say, "I shall record exactly 10 entries between the hours of 8 and 9 in the morning." Do not say, "I intend to walk for my health." Say, "I shall traverse 3 miles immediately following my morning meal." The more specific the command you give to your own mind, the less room remains for the vague whispers of the enemy to thrive. You must pin your intentions down with the precision of a master engineer. Next, you must lower the threshold of the start until it is so small that resistance finds no purchase. This enemy is at its strongest when you are standing still, contemplating the vastness of the journey, but its power begins to wither the moment the wheels begin to turn. Tell yourself, "I shall only put my hand to the work for 5 minutes, nothing more." Those 5 minutes are your first volley in the battle. Once you have broken the seal of inactivity, you will find that the heavy fog over your thoughts begins to lift. Action is the most potent antidote to the paralysis of the soul. Sometimes, simply standing at your post is the greatest victory of the day. Understand, too, that resistance is a master of disguise. It rarely shows its true face as simple laziness. Instead, it dons the mask of logic and prudence. It will tell you that you must conduct more research before you strike the first blow. It will suggest that you study one more volume or consult one more expert before you dare to commit your capital or your time. Look closely, and you will see that this is merely fear wearing the robes of scholarship. The only way to shatter this cycle is to start imperfectly. Let the work itself be your teacher. Adjust your course as the wind changes, but for the sake of your future, do not wait for the fog to clear entirely, for the world is never without its mists. I would also charge you to identify your own personal patterns of retreat. Observe yourself with the cold eye of a bookkeeper. At what hour do you most often feel the urge to quit? What trivialities usually derail your focus? Who among your acquaintances tends to lead your thoughts away from the task? Note these weak points and fortify them. If you find your attention wandering at home, seek the silence of a library or the discipline of the office. If the distractions of the world pull at your sleeve in the morning, leave your diversions in another room until your primary duty is discharged. Every barrier you remove is a victory for your character. We must also utilize the power of emotional foresight. Before you take up your tools, pause and ask your heart, "How shall I feel when this labor is concluded?" Connect the effort of the moment to the profound satisfaction of a duty well done. The human mind is designed to seek a reward. Let the reward be the dignity of completion and the quiet pride of the man who has mastered himself. There will be days, I promise you, when nothing seems to move. Resistance will feel like a leaden weight upon your limbs and a shroud over your intellect. On such days, hold fast to a single iron rule. Just do not quit. You may move more slowly than is your wont. You may complete but a fraction of your intended toil, but your mere presence at the post is a triumph over the enemy. Each time you take a single step through the thicket of resistance, you are reinforcing the bedrock of self-trust. My friend, you are not alone in this contest. Every man who has ever built a bridge, founded a library, or governed a state has faced this same internal pressure. The difference between the man who is remembered and the man who is forgotten is that the former recognized resistance for what it was, an illusion, and moved through it with relentless determination. Do not wait for a day when the path is easy and the sun is always bright. Become the man whom resistance cannot break. The more you act in spite of this force, the closer you move towards the only freedom worth having, the liberation from the barriers of your own making. One day, you shall look back and realize that you did not just build a career or a fortune, you defeated your former self and rose as a man of iron will.
When the world witnesses a man of great station, one who has amassed a fortune, mastered a science, or erected a monument to civilization, the multitude invariably asks, what is his secret? They look for a lightning bolt of genius or a stroke of miraculous luck. But those of us who have lived among the gears of industry know that the secret is something far more modest, yet infinitely more powerful. It is the architecture of deliberate systems. If you desire to elevate your life, do not start with grand, sweeping manifestos or lofty, unattainable goals. Start by designing a small action, repeated with the precision of a clock, until it becomes your second nature. When you build the right habits, you are no longer a soldier at war with your own nature every hour. You are a man moving in harmony with the rhythm of your own making. Habits, my friend, are simply choices that you have successfully programmed into your instinct. You do not need to summon the fires of your soul to brush your teeth in the morning, nor do you debate the merits of fastening your boots before you walk into the world. You do these things because they have become part of the machinery of your existence. If you apply this same principle to your higher callings, your studies, your investments, your physical vigor, your progress will eventually become as natural as your breath. But let us be intellectually honest. Willpower alone is a treacherous ally. Willpower is like the initial spark of the furnace, vital to start the flame, but insufficient to keep the mill running through the night. It is the fuel for the beginning, but systems are the iron tracks that keep the locomotive on its course, regardless of the engineer's mood. I ask you not whether you are motivated today, for motivation is as fickle as the weather. I ask you instead, what system have you constructed to protect the things you claim to value? A man without a system, no matter how fervent his start, will eventually be derailed by the first stone in the path. But a man with a system, even if he possesses only modest talents, will always return to his rhythm. This is the man who ultimately wins the day. You may fear that a system will confine your spirit, but the opposite is the truth. A system grants you the ultimate freedom. When the how and the when are decided in advance, you conserve your precious mental energy for the what. A writer who waits for the muse is a servant. A writer who sits at his desk at the same hour every morning is a master. Stability is the child of systems, not of fleeting inspiration. How, then, shall you build a system that can withstand the pressures of life? First, embrace the virtue of simplicity.
Do not attempt to overhaul your entire character in a single fortnight by adopting a dozen new rigors. Choose one singular habit, the most vital one, and make it an unshakable pillar of your day. Once that stone is firmly set, only then should you add the next. Second, employ the art of habit stacking. Anchor your new endeavor to a ritual that is already established. For instance, decide that as soon as you have partaken of your morning tea, you shall immediately devote 20 minutes to the study of the markets. Your mind will begin to accept this sequence as a natural law, requiring no more effort than the setting of the sun. Third, design your system to be fail-proof. A wise industrialist always has a contingency for a broken machine. If you intend to improve your constitution through exercise, but the weather turns foul, have a secondary plan for laboring within your own home. Do not let a predictable obstacle break the continuity of your rhythm. Fourth, keep a meticulous ledger of your progress. Whether it be a mark upon a calendar or a dedicated journal, the visual evidence of your streak is a powerful psychological incentive. When you see the chain of your successes growing longer, your spirit will loathe to break it. Never underestimate the transformative power of repetition. In the first month, you will have to command yourself constantly. In the third month, the burden will lighten as the habit takes root. After a year of faithful adherence, the world will look at you and wonder how you remain so disciplined. Your answer will be simple. I am not disciplined. I simply have a system. Systems do not merely maintain your current state. They provide the foundation for exponential growth. When you no longer waste your vital force on the agony of starting, you can invest that entire force into evolving. Every day, perform but one task well, but do it with an unceasing rhythmic consistency. You will be astonished when you look back after a season of such labor at the vast territory you have conquered. My friend, you do not require a miracle to change the course of your life. You only need to realize that success is the sum of 1,000 small, invisible actions that no one claps for. These actions are your habits. These habits are your system, and your system is the only certain pathway to the summit of any peak you choose to climb. The masters are not those who did something extraordinary once, but those who did something ordinary every day without fail.
I want you to envision a long, arduous road stretching toward the horizon. On either side, there are tempting groves where a man might rest and side paths that whisper of an easier journey. The road that leads to true success offers no immediate shade, no cheering throngs, and no sudden treasures. It offers but one thing, the necessity of relentless repetition, day after day, under the heat of the sun and the chill of the rain. I tell you this because I know that somewhere in your past there is a ghost, a goal you abandoned, a study you left unfinished, or a dream that is now gathering dust in the attic of your mind. You did not fail because you lacked the capacity. You failed because you lacked the belief in continuation. Today, I wish to help you reclaim that belief. The man who ultimately triumphs is rarely the swiftest or the most brilliant. He is the one who endures. He understands that success is the just reward for persistence, not for a fleeting moment of perfection. He does not wait for the clouds to part or for a surge of readiness to strike his heart. He simply continues. And by the mere act of remaining on the road, he eventually passes all those who started with a sprint but lacked the lungs for the marathon. If you desire to be counted among such men, you must revolutionize your response to adversity. Most men, when the road grows steep, retreat to the valley to wait for better times. But the man of character knows that the only way to the summit is through the climb. To quit may offer a moment of relief to the weary flesh, but it leaves a permanent scar upon the soul. The regret of what might have been will haunt a man more surely than any failure of the markets. On the other hand, every step you take when you are tired, every hour you labor when the heart is heavy, is a deposit into the bank of your own resilience. You are proving to the only judge who matters that you are a man who follows through. How then do we cultivate this spirit of endurance? First, you must cast out the language of trying. To say, "I shall try," is to provide yourself with a convenient exit before you have even begun. A man of industry does not try to build a bridge. He commits his life and his capital to the completion of it. You must declare to yourself, "I shall do this thing, come what may." Second, accept that boredom and difficulty are the necessary companions of progress. There will be days when the work feels like ashes in your mouth, and your progress is as invisible as the growth of the grass. It is precisely in these moments that your character is forged. The successful man is not the one who is always inspired. He is the one who does the work when inspiration has fled. By continuing to act, he eventually finds the momentum that leads back to joy. Third, learn to find satisfaction in the process itself rather than the distant result. If your eyes are fixed only on the finish line, you will grow weary of the miles in between. But if you learn to take pride in the straightness of the furrow you are plowing today, the journey becomes its own reward. The man who never gives up also understands the strategic necessity of rest. Do not confuse rest with surrender. A wise engineer knows when to bank the fires of the furnace so the iron may cool, but he never abandons the mill. You must give yourself the grace to recover your strength, provided that your feet remain pointed toward the goal. Most importantly, you must forge a new identity. Do not merely say, "I shall endeavor not to quit." Say, "I am the man who does not quit." When this belief takes root in your subconscious, your actions will begin to align with it as naturally as the compass needle points north. You will start to carry yourself with the quiet confidence of the resilient. You do not need to win a great battle every day. You merely need to show up every day. You do not need to move with the speed of lightning. You merely need to move forward, even if it be by a single inch, without stopping. The man who is truly invincible is the one who can look at 100 failures and still find the resolve to strike the 101st blow without bitterness. He does not see mistakes as the end of the chapter, but as the ink with which the next lesson is written. I know not what disappointments have caused you to falter in the past, but I know this: the past has no power over the man who chooses to continue today. If you are still drawing breath, you still possess the most precious commodity in the world, a chance to prove that you are not a leaf in the wind, but a mountain that stays. Will you be that man? Will you stay in the game until the final bell? The results you seek are waiting for you, but they are reserved only for those who are still standing when the dust of the struggle has settled.
If there is one singular moment that acts as the great divide in a man's life, the moment he ceases to be a mere passenger on the vessel of existence and becomes its captain, it is the instant he embraces radical responsibility. It is not found in the pages of a book, nor in the halls of a university, but in the quiet, often painful realization that he and he alone is the architect of his results. This is the moment you must let go of the crutches you have leaned upon, the betrayals of others, the lack of early advantage, the caprice of the markets, or the burdens of your past.
For as long as you point a finger at the world to explain your station, you are surrendering your power to the world. I have walked among men who possessed every advantage of birth and bullion, yet they perished in the gutters of failure because they were masters of the excuse. Conversely, I have seen men rise from the very soot of the pits, men who had nothing but the rags on their backs and a fierce light in their eyes, who transformed the face of industry. They did not ask, "Why is the world so hard?" They asked, "What must I do to master it?" That is the difference. When you take 100% responsibility for your life, you stop being a victim of fate and you become a creator of destiny. I am well aware that you have faced hardships. Perhaps you have been wronged, or perhaps you began your journey with a heavy handicap. I do not say this to diminish your trials, but to ask you a question of the utmost gravity. If you continue to recite the story of your misfortunes to explain your current lack of progress, will your future be anything but a weary echo of your past? By clinging to your excuses, you are locking yourself into a version of your soul that you have outgrown. Let us speak of fear. We often cloak our fear in the fine robes of prudence or timing. We say, "I am too occupied at present," or "I am not yet sufficiently skilled," or "the economic climate is not favorable." These are but polished disguises. In truth, it is the fear of failure, the fear of the world's judgment, or the light of your own potential that holds your hand. But hear me, fear never truly departs from the breast of the man of action. The difference is that the man of character acts in spite of it. He looks into the glass and declares, "I am the one responsible for the harvest I reap." When you take full ownership, a magnificent transformation occurs. Every setback ceases to be a tragedy and becomes a lesson. Every failure is no longer a verdict on your worth, but feedback for your next endeavor. You no longer require the world to change its ways for you to prosper. You simply change yourself to meet the world. You might argue that there are things beyond your command, the weather, the laws of the land, the opinions of the multitude, and you would be correct. But you possess absolute sovereignty over your response, your attitude, and your decisions. And that, my friend, is more than enough to rewrite the history of your life. Every time you blame your circumstances, you are handing the steering wheel of your life to a phantom. But when you reclaim responsibility, you reclaim the power to lead. Do not wait for a benefactor to rescue you. Do not wait for the laws to become more fair before you begin your labor. A man of spirit does not need permission to be great. When you operate from a place of full responsibility, the very nature of your toil changes. You no longer labor because you have to. You labor because you have chosen a life of meaning. Your actions are no longer fueled by the external pressure of external forces, but by the steady internal fire of your own commitment. You do not need motivation to take responsibility. Motivation is the child of action, not its father. When you finally tidy the office you have neglected, when you finally send the correspondence you have delayed, when you stand up and alter even one small habit, you are generating your own momentum. Do not wait for perfection. You will stumble. You will commit errors. You will find yourself lost in the woods at times. But if you keep rising and saying, "I am the one responsible," you can never truly be defeated. In the long game of life, the only way to lose is to surrender your agency. I charge you to examine your heart with radical honesty. What excuse are you currently nourishing to justify your delay? Are you waiting for a better tomorrow that never arrives? Are you blaming your employer, your upbringing, or the very stars themselves to avoid the labor of today? Erase these vanities. Rise and do the next right thing. The sooner you break the habit of excusism, the sooner you will break the chains of your own limits. One day, as you look back upon your journey from the vantage point of achievement, you will realize that the most important day of your life was not the day you received your first profit, but the day you decided to stop blaming and start building with your own two hands. The pen that writes your future is in your hand. Use it with courage.
If you have ever marveled at the man who stands at the pinnacle of his profession, the master artisan, the peerless orator, or the captain of industry, you likely sought the origin of his greatness in some hidden vein of natural genius. Yet I have observed that the secret of mastery is far less mystical and far more demanding. It is the principle of deliberate repetition. Mastery is not a destination reached by a single heroic leap. It is the result of doing the right thing with exacting precision over and over again until it moves from the conscious mind into the very marrow of one's bones. Most men are willing to labor when the fires of enthusiasm are high, but they falter when the work becomes a matter of routine. They seek the new, the novel, and the exciting, and in doing so, they remain forever in the foothills of mediocrity. But the master, the man who truly commands his fate, understands that skill is the child of boredom. He acts when he is tired. He practices when he is uninspired. He repeats the fundamental movements of his trade 1,000 times after the world has stopped watching. He knows that while emotions are as fleeting as the shadows on a summer lawn, a skill hammered out through repetition is a permanent possession of the soul. Think of the great musicians who have graced our concert halls. Do you imagine they rely on a gift when they strike the keys? No, they have repeated their scales and their movements until their hands no longer require the permission of the brain. That is not genius in the common sense. It is the reprogramming of the human machinery through tireless application. And I would have you understand that when you repeat a virtuous action, you are doing more than merely refining a technique. You are reprogramming your very identity. Each time you perform a duty, you are casting a vote for the man you wish to become. Repeat it often enough, and it becomes a reflex, an instinctive response to the challenges of life. The average man retreats when the process of growth becomes dull. He mistakes the quiet of the routine for a lack of progress. But the exceptional man knows that this very dullness is a sign that the iron is being tempered. When you perform the same necessary tasks day in and day out with an eye for ever greater refinement, you are not merely doing, you are evolving. Real confidence does not come from the hollow declarations of the tongue. It comes from the quiet knowledge that you have done the work so many times that failure no longer has a place to stand. I have known many brilliant men, men of sparkling wit and vast education, who never rose above the rank and file because they lacked the stomach for repetition. They would try a venture, meet with a modest success or a minor setback, and then wander off in search of some new inspiration. Meanwhile, the man who chose one path and trod it with rhythmic persistence eventually reached the summit. It is the steady drip of the water, not the passing storm, that carves the canyon. If you feel discouraged today, if you are asking yourself whether your small daily labors are truly worth the cost, I urge you to return to this core truth. Every ounce of mastery begins with a single humble repetition. Do not wait until you are good to begin your practice. It is the practice that makes you good. Do not look to the outside world for a sign. Let each deliberate action be a brick in the fortress of your character. If the path feels heavy, remember that you need not conquer the whole world at once. You only need to master the one thing before you today. Write that one page, study that one ledger, practice that one movement of your craft. Do it with all the focus of your soul, and then do it again tomorrow. This is the only certain path to excellence. While your neighbors are waiting for a miracle or searching for a shortcut that does not exist, you will be quietly and systematically building a destiny that is inevitable. The winner in the race of life is not the one who starts with the greatest advantage, but the one who refuses to stop repeating the right actions until the results are as certain as the rising sun. You do not have to be fast, you only have to be consistent.
You do not have to be a giant, you only have to be the man who is still at his post when all others have sought the comfort of the fire. Repetition is the secret of the masters, and today that secret is placed in your hands. The only question that remains is this: are you willing to be bored on your way to being extraordinary?
There will inevitably come a season in your journey when the wheels of your ambition seem to grind against the very grit of despair. You will wake to a morning where the spirit is leaden, the limbs are weary, and every voice within you screams, "I can no longer endure. I must lay down this burden." I would have you understand that this is not a sign of your weakness, nor is it a message from the heavens that you have chosen the wrong path. It is the common trial of any man who seeks to rise above the level of the masses. The path of personal growth always winds through the dark valleys, where one is forced to confront the shadows of his own doubt. And right there, in the moment you feel most inclined to surrender, is where the hinges of your destiny actually turn. I have felt this chill in my own breast. I have sat in the silence of many a lonely hour, questioning if the labor was worth the cost, if the steel would ever emerge from the fire, or if I was merely a fool chasing a phantom. But I learned a truth that I now pass to you. Those moments when you feel you have reached your limit are not signs to stop. They are signs that you are on the precipice of a breakthrough. No man who has ever erected a library, founded a university, or commanded an industry reached those heights without first wanting to quit 1,000 times. The difference is found in a single narrow margin. The man of character takes one more step after his heart has told him he is finished. When you find yourself exhausted and the horizon seems to recede, what you require is not a fresh reason to labor, but a quiet return to your why. You must sit in the silence and ask, what was the original spark that set this engine in motion? What vision of a better life, a stronger character, or a more generous service once lit the fire in your soul? That memory is the anchor that will hold you steady when the storms of emotion threaten to wash you away. Furthermore, you must realize that you may be in what I call the blind zone of progress. Like the seed beneath the winter soil, much of your growth is invisible to the eye. You water the ground with your sweat and your discipline, yet the surface remains unchanged. Do not mistake this silence for failure. Every great transformation begins in the dark, underground. The world only sees the oak when it breaks the crust, but the work was done in the long, quiet months of rooting. The breakthrough belongs to the man who stayed, to the man who refused to walk away while the results were still hidden from view. You must train in yourself an anti-quitting reflex. When the mind begins to whisper its weary litany, "I am too tired, the task is too great, tomorrow will be easier," you must learn to observe these thoughts as one observes the passing clouds, without granting them the authority to govern your actions. You do not need to feel inspired to act. You only need to be faithful. If you cannot run, walk. If you cannot walk, crawl. But by all the laws of progress, do not stand still. Action is the only sovereign remedy for the crisis of the soul. Understand this: adversity does not appear to bar your way. It appears to test the sincerity of your resolve. The exhaustion will pass. The doubt will eventually lift like a morning mist. But the shame of quitting is a garment that clings to a man for a lifetime. To give up is to condemn yourself to an endless cycle of unfinished beginnings. If you have traveled this far, you owe it to the man you were when you started to see the work through to its conclusion. You deserve to witness what lies on the other side of your own endurance. There is a principle I have shared with every young man I have mentored. Quitting is a habit, but so is continuing. Every time you master the urge to surrender, you are breaking the old, brittle patterns of your former self. You are forging a character that is resilient, a spirit that is unshakable. One day, when you face a challenge that would have broken you in your youth, you will find yourself smiling.
You will know that you have survived darker nights and steeper climbs than the one before you. No man wins every day, but the man who refuses to quit on his worst days is the man who eventually commands the field. If today the burden feels too great, do not make a decision in the heat of your weariness. Simply pause. Wait for the sun to rise. You will find that strength returns to the man who waits upon his duty. Your destiny is being written in the moments you choose to persevere, even when the world offers no reason to do so. Stay at your post. The dawn is closer than you think.
There is a final, sovereign truth that I wish to engrave upon the tablets of your memory. Every great achievement you behold in this world, the sprawling railways, the towering libraries, the immense works of charity, is but the visible tip of an immense iceberg. Beneath the surface, supporting all that is seen, lies a foundation of mindset. It is not the external action alone that determines the trajectory of a man's life. It is the internal filter through which he views the world. If you desire to change the harvest of your life, you must first look to the soil of your thoughts. Mindset is the central control system of your soul. I have walked among men of tireless industry who yet remained stagnant, and I have seen others of humble means rise to the very heights of human potential. The difference, I assure you, was not in their hands, but in their minds. The former group operated from a fixed mindset, believing their talents were a stagnant inheritance, while the latter embraced a growth mindset. They understood that the mind is like a garden. It can be tilled, planted, and improved through deliberate effort. They did not say, "I am not capable." They said, "I have not yet mastered this, but through labor I shall." A strong mindset does not mean a life free of sorrow or struggle. It means facing the cold realities of life and still choosing a belief that empowers you. It is the ability to say, "I am in a season of trial, but I am not defeated." It is the discipline to stop asking, "How do I feel today?" and to start asking, "What is the duty required of me?" Emotions are like the shifting sands of the shore. Duty is the rock upon which you must build your house. A successful man is not one who is blessed with a constant sun in his heart, but one who performs the right actions even when the sky is gray and the winds are biting. You must also master the art of the story of the self. We all tell ourselves a tale of why we are where we are. You can tell a story of victimhood, of how the world was unfair and how you were thwarted at every turn. Or you can tell the story of the apprentice, of how every failure was a teacher and every hardship was the hammer that tempered your steel. The facts of your life may be the same, but the meaning you assign to them will either chain you to the earth or give you wings to soar. Furthermore, I charge you to shift your gaze from the outcome to the process. The man who is obsessed only with the gold at the end of the road will easily grow discouraged when the road is long. But the man who falls in love with the rhythm of the walk, who takes pride in the straightness of his furrow and the honesty of his daily ledger, is the man who cannot be stopped. Success is not a distant port. It is the manner in which you sail the ship every single day. You are successful every time you honor a commitment to yourself, every time you choose the hard right over the easy wrong, and every time you rise after a fall. Beware, too, of the waiting mindset. Do not wait for a sign from heaven or a change in the political climate before you begin. The world does not owe you a perfect beginning. You must begin where you stand, with what you have, and the light you require will appear as you move forward. You do not need more time. You only need the resolve to use the minutes you have with a sacred intensity. The man who truly lives is the man who takes total ownership. He is the man who declares, "If this work is to be done, I am the one to do it."
When you embrace this responsibility, you cease to be a pawn in the games of others, and you become the architect of your own future. I believe in you, not because I am given to empty optimism, but because I have seen the power of a single soul committed to consistency and character transform the world. The path is before you. The tools are in your hands. Now go forth and build a life that reflects the best within you. My friends, if these lessons have stirred the fire within your own breast, I invite you to join our fellowship of industry and character. Subscribe to this channel to ensure you do not miss our future discourses on the virtues of success. There are many more lessons to be shared and many more maps to be drawn for the journey ahead. Watch our other videos to further fortify your mind and refine your spirit. The work of building a life of consequence is never finished. Let us continue this great labor together.